Hello, everybody, and welcome to the WildWeiler Weekly Wrap. As always, I'm WildWeiler, and this show is late this week because I went to a Turkish rug show. And you know what a Turkish rug show is? It's where a Turkish guy in a van shows up and shows you a bunch of rugs. And I will say this, it's kind of amazing. It's very expensive. Rugs are not cheap, as it turns out, but it's interesting to just talk to somebody about, carpets and culture. It was cool, but that's not one of the topics this week. So we're going to dive straight into it with the first game I played called The Pale Beyond. The Pale Beyond is a story-driven resource management game that has this sort of like inventory of cards system. It's not like a card game like some other games like Station to Station or whatnot, but fundamentally everything is a card. And every turn is you're playing all your cards and whatnot, and you're managing your resources. And it's really tight gameplay-wise. Like, A and B decisions really do make a lot of sense. There's these other currencies like crew loyalty, because the game is fundamentally about an expedition into the Arctic in a fantasy-ish world. I should say a fantasy-ish world, a fictional world. The opening parts of the story actually really follow beat by beat a lot of the real-life Lost Franklin expedition, and that was to find the Northwest Passage. It is the basis of the television show The Terror, which I like and highly recommend, and that's all I'll say about that. And what I mean by that is the first season. I haven't watched any other seasons of The Terror, just, the season about the ship called The Terror. I understand that it's an anthology show, so the next season is something else, but I'm a little off my base here. Much like, oddly enough, the show The Terror, The Pale Beyond hints at some mysticism, some supernaturality that is going on and going to affect you, and it pays off way too late. It's weird like that, and it's very confusing. And the reason I say it's confusing is because the whole time you're playing the game, in the save screen, there's a concept of like branching and pruning, so you can kind of change how your choices go in this resource management story-based narrative. But you don't actually learn how to branch until the very end of the game if you make a certain decision, which I did not. So I didn't get to interact with literally the mysticism of the game. Literally a key component to what is otherwise an amazing story. And the way I would fix this, developers, is if you're going to add minor spoilers, if you're going to add a sort of new game plus style go back in time and try to make your decisions better mechanic to your game, you need to let the player know that exists before they get to the end of the game. Because I worked really hard to make the decisions I made the way I made them. So when temptation knocked at the end of the game, I had no reason to. I had made compromises that I felt I could live with, and I thought I was on my way to the credits, which I was. But that means, I had to look up, hey, what happens if you make this decision the other way? Oh, you unlock the ability to go back in time and change your results. So that is that. And that's not a huge spoiler. It's just a mechanical thing. And like I said, the save menu tells you that that's going to happen, and it won't tell you how that happens because that would be the real spoiler. But that's what I'm pretty disappointed about in the game, because everything else about it was great. I felt like all the characters were alive and real and had real feelings and emotions, and you had to make so many tough decisions along the way to keep people both loyal and happy, but also fed and alive. And there's a moment towards the end of the game where people are thinking about abandoning the camp because of a number of reasons, and you have to walk them through how you got here, and it's really strong stuff. It's really, really strong stuff. I did a little research in the achievements for The Pale Beyond. It looks like about 50% of people made the choice I made, of the people that made it to the end of the game, which is about 18% of players. There's 9% that have the achievements I have, and 9% that have the other achievements. There's obviously some overlap, depending on people who go back and do both and whatnot. But I'm happy with the ending I got. I'm happy with the way things played out. And I'm happy with that. For me, I didn't need answers to why the world was the way it is and how things can change. And I'm happy with that. And in reflection, just thinking about The Pale Beyond and how I played it, it's an earnest and challenging game that only falls short in a few small ways, but these ways are unfortunately very, very key to, I think, the story it's trying to sell, or tell, I should say, and sell in a very real sense of gameplay. But I won't rob The Pale Beyond a good score. It gets and has earned every amount of its 8 out of 10 through its earnestness and kindness and depth and beauty and sadness. I highly recommend The Pale Beyond. I truly, truly do. And if you want to see a little bit of it before you yourself maybe buy it, a channel I recommend called Johnny Chiodini has a stream of it. They did that at some point. I can't remember exactly when, but that's how I got turned on to the game, is I watched them stream it, and that would be at youtube.com/Johnny Chiodini. They're also part of the Ox Venture, that's OX Venture, and you can find them there. They are the DM. They're a lovely person. I don't need to be shilling them because their audience has 5 numbers in it. But my point is if you ever want to know, hey, what kind of indie games is Wild picking around? Well, I'm watching Johnny Chiodini's streams, and if I like them, I play those games. I don't stream those games because they streamed them, but I do play them. So anyways, The Pale Beyond, 8 out of 10, very earnest, very amazing game. I highly recommend. Speaking of earnest games, Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector came out, and it's on Games Pass, and I can't find anywhere in my notes me telling you all that I played Citizen Sleeper, the first one. Oh my gosh, that game is amazing. I played it over the Christmas break this year, and I must have dumped 20 hours into it in a week. It was great. Citizen Sleeper 2 is a fitting sequel to a very good game. It stripped away some of the mechanics, added others. I think energy and hunger work a tiny bit better now, but there is no more needing regular injections of your maintainer to stay alive. In short, in Citizen Sleeper, and this is a really cool high concept, but it is a high concept, so stay with me. In the future, artificial general intelligence is banned for, I believe, some sort of Blade Runner-esque or Battlestar Galactica-esque computer shutdown uprising thing. In Blade Runner, it's the blackout, which happens sometime between Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049. In Battlestar Galactica, it's the first Cylon War. Anyways, so something like that happens. But corporations love their robot slave drones, so what they do is they let people work off debt by putting them into chemically induced sleep and then copying their consciousness in digital space and transplanting that into a frame or body called a sleeper. And then the idea is that this skirts anti-AI laws because it's a person's emulated brain and not an artificial intelligence. And in both Citizen Sleeper and Citizen Sleeper 2, you are one of these frames that has decided they don't want to be a slave, and they've escaped somehow. And there's a number of things that make your life hard and bad, but the game is so earnest, and both are so earnest and beautiful, and they make me cry just thinking about them because of how perfect they tell stories. And that's not hyperbole. They're both great games. Citizen Sleeper 2 has a problem, and that is, well, actually both these games have this problem, which is to say, oh boy, does that game really have a lot of playtime. So it needs places where you can make solid saves. So if you want to go back and make other choices, you can. That was the problem I got towards the end of the first game, where you're trying to choose, like, how does this story play out? How does this end? Where does my character go in the universe? And I made some decisions for that first character in the first game based off of some events that happened in the game, and I'm happy with those. As much as I started there, I am happy with them. This is a great game. The second game also has the same sort of problem. I'm about like a third into it, I think. The other problem it has is there's this mechanic where if you do bad enough on the normal difficulty, you'll get a permanent badness. I don't much appreciate that, if I'm honest. I don't like story-driven games that are as long as Citizen Sleeper 2 is, where you get a permanent badness. And I'll explain this badness in a little bit. The core mechanic of the games is every day you roll 5 dice, and they're D6s, 6-sided dice. And you slot those into skill checks throughout the day, and you know what they landed on. So, like, that's how it works. The permanent badness is, like, it messes with the probabilities on those dice. And that sucks as a permanent badness. Like, because the dice are everything. So everything is now messed with when you make a catastrophic miscalculation. And that sucks. That really, really sucks. And the other thing that really, really sucks about that is I made my first badness in what's called a contract, which is a type of day series in the game where you go out on your spaceship to like an asteroid or something and you do something there and then you come back. And I knew I was in trouble, right? And I was like, okay, I'll just go back early, just quit the mission, go back early, whatever. And you can't abandon a mission. You have to either see it through or fail it. And so I got the badness essentially trying to fail, trying to be like, let me out. I need to go back or I'll die. And I couldn't, so it sucks that you can't cut bait or cut and run or whatever you wanna say. But that is something that upsets me. But now that I've learned that and I've passed that a little bit on to you, like, if you go on a contract to Citizen Sleeper 2, be sure you're ready for it because you are committed. Hopefully you won't, run into the problems I did. They also removed the hacking stuff, which I miss. I felt that really like reminded you constantly that you're a person who's different than everybody else. They're doing it in other ways in the second one, but anyways, I really loved the first Citizen Sleeper game, and I am loving the second one, my complaints aside. I haven't got into it enough to give it a rating, but I like it. It's good, and you should try it out. It's on Games Pass, so what's stopping you? I went to a high school musical this week. Not that one. I went to a high school musical production of Footloose. It was good. I'd never seen Footloose before, and it was quite good, quite different. Actually, no, it wasn't different. I kind of roughly knew the plot of Footloose, which is to say, in the 80s, somebody learned that the like church community I grew up in existed, only as a happy ending. So, ta-da! Yeah, no, Footloose is interesting. It was a good high school production. I'm not going to rag on a high school production of Footloose in a vlog on the internet. I will say this, though. All of their big problems were down to one thing, and that is tech. And that is because tech is so hard for high schools, because I feel like tech is also one of the most expensive things. And I've been to community theaters where the tech is bad. Like, so it's so much harder even for these high schoolers to like really dial in tech. Like, there's a reason traveling shows have trucks of people doing tech and lighting and whatnot. So really good on them, to where their only problems were all in tech, you know, miking, lighting, yeah, and they handled them really well. But good on these kids. Like, it was really great. I was also surprised by a couple of things in the soundtrack to Footloose, because I knew the soundtrack, well, I knew the song Footloose was a pretty big Kenny Loggins song. What I did not know is that I'm Free, parentheses, Heaven Helps the Man, and Bonnie Tyler's Hero were both songs from the soundtrack to that movie, like, originally. So Kenny Loggins has 2 songs, Bonnie Tyler has a song, and then there's a whole bunch of other ones. There's a Sammy Hagar song. I can't remember any of the others off the top of my head, but it's a crazy well soundtracked movie. It's like good. So it's interesting, because if you look at the soundtrack for the movie, it's like if you're going to make a jukebox movie, you just use the Footloose soundtrack, but so many of the songs in the movie are like from the movie. So just crazy. Just crazy. And I loved it. So my recommendation to you this week is listen to the Footloose soundtrack. That's what I challenge you to do. That does it for this week. Thank you all for watching. I don't have any other content coming out right now because I am so very busy, but there was a thing going on in my life that was eating a lot of my time, and that has now ended. So I will have more time to get back to recording as soon as I deal with some latent sinus problems. But as always, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope you have a lovely day. Bye-bye.